Create enriching experiences beyond the classroom through ACSI Student Leadership and Learning with Emily Pigott.
Well, hello and welcome to the Student Leadership and Learning Podcast, where we journey together to impact, influence, and equip today's students to lead with intentionality and purpose. Well, I'm Emily Pigott, your host, and it is my honor to spend some time with you as we explore ways to develop Christ-centered student leaders who make a lasting impact on the world. Well, today we're diving into a crucial topic called integrating faith and leadership skills. This is where spiritual formation meets practical action, if you will, and it's one of the most exciting parts of working with young leaders. You know, as educators, we're not just preparing our students to lead clubs and student government, student councils, lead on the athletic field. We're helping them become leaders who reflect Christ in everything they do. So how do we balance teaching spiritual disciplines with practical leadership skills? So that's what we're unpacking today. So I want to start with a foundation, faith as the core of leadership. So true leadership begins with character, for it is the foundation upon which trust and influence are built. And we're going to unpack a little bit more about influence in a minute. When leaders place their trust in God, they lead not with pride, but with purpose. So we've heard leadership defined in its simplest form as influence. But this is where we get into a bit of trouble. See, influence can be both good and bad. Reflect back through history. Some of the most significant influencers have influenced in a destructive, pride-filled manner. This isn't the type of influence we want from our students, which is why we have to start with that foundation of faith. There's a song, it's an older song based back in 1990. It tells you a little bit about my age, but it was sung by a group called For Him. Maybe you've heard of them, maybe not. Look it up on Spotify, but their song was titled Where There Is Faith. And the lyrics, although it's an older song, paint a powerful picture of faith. The song the beginning of the song, it describes things that are good for us to believe in, things that are good for us to support, such as faithfulness, serving others, peace, love, honesty, and so on. But then they drive home the point that none of that is enough unless we believe that Jesus died, was buried, and rose from the dead so that we could have everlasting life. See, this is the foundation of faith that is critical for our students before we thrust them into leadership positions. The song goes like this: I believe in faithfulness. I believe in giving of myself for someone else. Can you hear us teaching students that? I believe in peace and love. Of course we do. I believe in honesty and trust, but that's not enough. For all that I believe may never change the way it is, meaning the condition of our world, unless I believe that Jesus lives. And the song goes on to describe what life is like for those of us who have faith in Jesus. It's a beautiful picture. It says, where there is faith, there's a voice calling, keep walking. You're not alone in this world. Where there is faith, there's a peace. Don't we need that peace? Like a child sleeping, hope everlasting in He who is able to bear every burden, to heal every hurt in my heart, in your heart, in our students' hearts. It's a wonderful, powerful place where there is faith. It's an incredible song that really paints a beautiful picture of that foundation that we want to build in our students. And Proverbs 3:5-6, you know this verse, it reminds us, trust in the Lord with all your heart, everything, and lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways, in everything you do, submit to Him, His purpose, His plans, His leading, His direction, and He will make your path straight. We want our students to lead from a place of trust in God, not a place of self-reliance on their gifts and talents and abilities. You know, I once worked with a student who is naturally gifted at leading, but often struggled with pride. I'm sure you can relate. You have some students like that. He was a gifted leader, but was beginning to lose his ability to influence and build relationships because when something was accomplished, he was quick to take all the credit. The word I became his nemesis. So we stepped in and we worked together, myself and my leadership team, and we worked to get together to give him some grip on that slippery path that he was on. We did this through weekly devotionals, intentional conversation, some coaching and mentoring moments, and we focused on humility and serving others first. We didn't point out all the things he was doing wrong because, quite honestly, that causes our students to get on the defensive, especially today's learners. But instead, we focused on how can we serve others? How can we lead from a place of humility? And so we looked at Philippians 2:3-4 together, which says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather in humility, value others before yourself. We helped this young leader refocus. And when we did that, he learned that leadership isn't about being in the spotlight, but rather about shining that spotlight on others. So, how can you be sure that you are incorporating a focus on faith development in your students? Well, there's some practical things that we're going to walk through today. Begin by integrating faith discussions into your leadership programs. Sounds simple enough. If it was simple, we'd all be doing it. But ask students reflective questions. Forcing reflection is one of the greatest gifts we can give our students. In our fast-paced world, we don't often stop and reflect. Ask them questions like, how does your faith influence your decision making as a leader? This encourages them to think about their leadership roles within their relationship with Christ. And now that we've established the importance of that life devoted to Jesus as a critical component in leadership effectiveness, I want us to dive even deeper and look at some very practical leadership skills that we can help our students develop. The first is decision making with integrity. One essential leadership skill is decision making. As leaders, we make thousands of decisions per day, per week, per month, constantly. I lose count of how many decisions I have to make in a day. Some of them are challenging ones, some of them aren't. But as Christian leaders, we need to equip our students to make decisions through the lens of integrity and biblical values. James 1:5 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God. Do we remind our students to pray for wisdom, to pray for favor, to pray for discernment? Ask of God, according to James 1:5, who gives generously to all without finding fault. We need to teach our students to pray and seek wise counsel before they make those tough calls. Proverbs 11:14 says, where there is no guidance, people fail. But in an abundance of counselors, there is safety. Again, helping students understand this leadership journey that they're on is not meant to be a journey that they walk alone. One of my favorite things is watching my students go through the decision-making process. It is a beautiful and a little stressful process to watch, but allowing them to navigate all the possible choices and outcomes and of each possible decision is one of the best ways to teach them the value of prayer and wisdom. These decisions, especially the more leadership that you give to students, these decisions won't be easy. And the more challenging we make these decisions for our students, quite honestly, the better. I love to entrust great responsibility to my student leaders, and they felt the weight of the decisions that they made. I want them to feel the weight. One time, a group of student leaders, I remember they wanted to completely change a procedure that we had in place for years in our school. Of course they do. They love being change agents, and I love being a change agent. So I'm right there with them. I could totally see why they wanted to make the change. But at the same time, I could also see the issues with their proposals. Now, I could have easily brought all of these issues up because we sat together and we talked it all through, but I didn't. I just asked them questions, continually prompting them to really think and consider. Then they, completely on their own, as a result of me prompting them with all of their questions, they decided to seek more counsel outside of the room. Loved that. Before they came up with a finalized proposal for this new procedure. And when I got their final proposal, they nailed it. See, they listened with authentic humility. They sought wisdom from a multitude of counselors, and the outcome was better than anything that I could actually even have thought up on my own. A second practical leadership skill is equipping our students to communicate with grace. Communication is a vital leadership skill. Ephesians 4:29 tells us, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up. We have to equip and teach our students to communicate with clarity, with empathy, more about that in a moment, and respect. Now, I promise you that this will take a lot of practice from your students. I mean, let's be honest, it takes a lot of practice from us as a result, especially those of us that are outspoken and maybe have an extra dose of confidence wrapped up in there. You see, this was me growing up. I've always been a strong-willed individual. I'm confident. Not arrogant, but I am confident. But I don't hesitate to speak up. My nemesis, my Achilles heel, is if there is weak leadership or no leadership present. That's when you get the most conversation and the most leadership. For me, because if nobody else is leading, I'm going to step up to the plate. Many of our students are like that. The challenge is so many aren't leading that those that are choosing to are stepping in and they have little to no experience, which is where we come in developing our student leaders. I remember a time early in my leadership, I was known for being a tough, no nonsense leader. Yeah, I was very relational, but I could easily make challenging decisions with little to no emotion. In other words, I don't get in my feelings. It's just not how I'm wired. And I could rally a diverse group of people to achieve a common goal and like it in the process. I can still do that today, but to give you a picture of what I was like back then, and even some components of today, think of Captain America and how he approaches things. Now, don't misunderstand me. I am in no way comparing myself to the Captain America, but I do resonate with his leadership style, specifically this quote when he says, when the mob and the press and the whole world tell you to move, your job is to plant yourself like a tree by the river of truth and tell the whole world, no, you move. Doesn't matter what the press says. It doesn't matter what the politicians or the mob say. Doesn't matter if the whole country decides that something is wrong, even when it's right. See, what is he saying there? He is saying that no matter the pressures that come against me, I will stand. And this is what I mean by being a confident, no nonsense leader. We're not going to be swayed to and fro according to the winds of doctrine that may come our way. We know what we believe in and we know how to articulate it. That's where we need to move our students to. And another quote that Captain America is known for is when he says he's fighting a battle and he's standing up for something that he believes in. And his response is, I can do this all day. I can get back up. I can get back up. I can get back up. So he's saying he will rally. There's one thing that you can count on Captain America for. He will never give up. Can we say the same thing about us as leaders? Can we say the same thing about our students as leaders? Back we had fun in my leadership roles. And still to this day, I have a phenomenal team. We have fun. We get things done. We understand even today. We don't get in our feelings. We feel, but we don't let our feelings cause us to get bogged down. We serve people. We solve problems. One thing has changed in my leadership from my early years until now, and it has everything to do with empathy. See, empathy, according to Gary Burnison, is the catalyst that turns words to a feeling and then to an action. One of the greatest gifts we can give our students is to teach them to lead with empathy. This is the game changer. This is what I learned. This is the change that I made in my leadership that has equipped me to lead with even more intentionality and purpose. Today, if our students see something wrong with the world, they call it out. They do. And they're going to go to work and try to fix it. That's all great. But we also must teach them that no matter how right they are, they won't get very far in leadership if they don't have empathy. You see, empathy, again, from Gary Burnison, he describes it as this: it means meeting others where they are to understand who they are, not just what they do. When this happens, they are more likely to feel a part of something greater than themselves. So maybe you could try this as an activity to develop empathy with your students. Have them role play difficult conversations, like maybe giving feedback to a peer, maybe giving a critical feedback in a way that is non-offensive. And then afterward, ask them this question and maybe have it resonate again and again. How did you reflect Christ in that interaction? Do you feel that you demonstrated empathy? See, this helps them practice real world leadership with the biblical mindset. Another option, maybe consider someone you find difficult to understand. This one's for you. This one's not for your students. This one's for you. Think about your team. Think about your students. Think about your parents that you serve. Maybe think of someone that's difficult for you to understand. Now consider this. What is one question that you could ask them to understand their perspective better? Or maybe if you want someone to understand you better, what is one question that you wish someone would ask you when you want them to understand you better? This is a great activity to take your students through, but really it starts with us. Maybe it's a great activity for us to consider. See, what we wish to see in the world, it has to begin with us. We may not be able to change the circumstances of people's lives, but there is something we can do. I see you, I hear you, you matter, and I care. So a third practical leadership skill that we can help implement with our students is leading through service. And we talk a lot about servant leadership at ACSI. And if you are in a conversation with me for any length of time, it will come up. But what does it actually look like? Well, Jesus gives us the ultimate example in John 13:14, when he washed his disciples' feet. You're familiar with this. In the time of Jesus, it was customary for a servant to wash people's feet as they entered a house. You know, they wore sandals or sometimes barefoot. Feet would be dirty from the street, which were often unsanitary, from the animals or just the regular dirt that was out there. But Jesus wanted his followers to know, as he washed in the servant's position his disciples' feet, the King of the universe, the God of creation, humbled himself to a position to wash his disciples' feet. Humility, love, service, those are the true attributes of a leader. So Jesus was setting his disciples up through example to be genuine and effective leaders. You know, I live in Florida. So we are no strangers to hurricanes. And one year on our campus, we've had quite a few in the last few years, but one year when I was still at my school that I served at for 20 years, a hurricane hit. It was almost a Category 5. It actually was a Category 5 and then was downgraded to a 4. For those of you that aren't familiar with hurricanes, a Category 5 is bad. And very destructive. And we took a direct hit. The eye wall went right over not only my home, but also our school. And by going over my home and our school, that means it went over large populations of our students' homes. The devastation was extensive. And for our school, it specifically hit our band room and our gym area. So it impacted our performing and fine arts and our athletic program. It was a total loss. Everything was gone. and black mold. It set in within days. And if you're not familiar with that, it is toxic. And as soon as it hits, it ruins things. You cannot salvage it. You have to throw it away. So everything was useless, from our athletic equipment to our band equipment. And what happened next will forever rank as one of my favorite examples of what a student body can accomplish. They rallied together. They thought not of their homes. They only thought of how can we come together and save our performing and fine arts and our athletic program. And they did the most beautiful job. So maybe prayerfully, this type of devastation is not on your campus, but can't we just encourage our students to find one way to serve their peers this week? Look for those moments, whether it's helping maybe with homework, listening, just a listening ear, an empathetic moment, or simply just being kind and responding kindly when it's hard. We've discussed some really essential skills that students must develop to integrate their faith into leadership. And we have to remind them that this process continues outside of our school walls. So balancing faith and leadership in real life, it's critical. You see, because leadership isn't just about the big moments, it's about the everyday faithfulness. Colossians 3:23, says, this, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as unto the Lord, not for as unto man. And we need to help our students see that their daily choices, and even ours, showing up on time, doing their best, treating others well, maintaining a walk of integrity at all times. See, those are all acts of leadership. So a practical exercise maybe to help you take your students develop and walk through these things. Ask your student leaders to journal. One small everyday action they can take to reflect Christ in their leadership role. Just write down one thing. And then you, as their leadership mentor, review it with them at the end of the week and then celebrate their faithfulness. Just one small, just recognizing this is half, well, it's 3/4 of the battle, actually. We've explored how to integrate faith and leadership by grounding students in their identity in Christ, by teaching practical skills through a biblical lens, and through encouraging our students and celebrating their faithfulness in everyday actions. You see, remember, you're not just teaching your student leaders, you're equipping them to be kingdom influencers. Leadership isn't about titles or positions. You know this. It's about reflecting Christ wherever we are. This week, I encourage you, find one way, just one, to integrate one of these faith principles into your leadership training. Maybe it's through a devotional time, a reflective question, or even a practical exercise. One of the things that we've talked about. We have this incredible opportunity to shape young leaders. Pray with me, pray with us at ACSI that God will equip us, all of us, to guide and lead our students with integrity, with wisdom, and with grace, that our students will always seek Him first in all they do. Well, thank you for joining me today on the Student Leadership and Learning podcast. If you found this episode helpful, and I hope you have, share it with a fellow educator, and don't forget to subscribe so that you can stay tuned in for more Christ-centered leadership insights, especially as we work to develop student leadership. So until next time, keep inspiring this next generation to lead with confidence, because what you do matters. Every moment, every day, you are a difference maker, and our students are worth it. We'll see you next time.
Student Leadership and Learning is a presentation of the Association of Christian Schools International. Create enriching experiences beyond the classroom by visiting acsi.org/studentleadership.